DDR1 DDR1 launched commercially in 2000 and ran at speeds ranging from 200 MHz to 400 MHz, with memory capacities topping out around 1 GB per stick. For the time, this was genuinely impressive. You could browse the web, run Microsoft Office, and play games like Quake 3 and the original Half-Life without many complaints. However, DDR1 carried a serious voltage problem. It required 2.5 volts to operate, which was high for a memory module and meant the chips ran warm under normal workloads and hot under heavier ones. When combined with the poor thermal management designs common in early 2000s desktop builds, this caused instability and occasional crashes. One lesser-known detail about DDR1 is that its memory cells used a relatively simple architecture with a 2N prefetch buffer, meaning it fetched 2 bits of data from the internal memory array per cycle. This prefetch design became the foundation that all future DDR generations would build upon, each one multiplying that number further. DDR2 launched in 2004 and brought a meaningful set of improvements, though its rollout was controversial in the enthusiast community because early DDR2 actually had higher latency than DDR1. Latency in RAM refers to the delay between when the processor requests data and when the memory actually delivers it. DDR2 used a 4N prefetch buffer, doubling the prefetch depth of DDR1, which allowed it to achieve higher clock speeds. But the trade-off was that those extra internal steps added latency to each request. So in benchmark tests from 2004 and 2005, high-end DDR1 setups actually traded blows with early DDR2 configurations and real-world application performance, even though DDR2 had higher raw bandwidth on paper. This gap closed fairly quickly as DDR2 speeds climbed from 400 MHz at the entry level all the way to 800 MHz and eventually beyond, with enthusiast modules reaching 1066 MHz. Voltage dropped to 1.8 volts compared to DDR1's 2.5 volts, which made a real difference in heat output and power draw. With speeds up to 800 MHz and capacities reaching 4 GB in a dual-channel setup, DDR2 was capable enough to run Windows Vista smoothly, handle early HD video playback, and play demanding games of that era like The Elder Scrolls Oblivion, Call of Duty 2, and Company of Heroes without constantly hitting a memory wall. DDR2 also introduced on-die termination, which moved signal termination resistors directly onto the memory chip itself rather than placing them on the motherboard. This reduced signal noise at higher speeds and was a key part of what made DDR2 able to scale to faster clock rates reliably. The notch position on the physical module shifted compared to DDR1, making it physically impossible to accidentally install the wrong generation into a motherboard. A simple but important design choice that every DDR generation has carried forward. Despite all this, DDR2 had a reputation problem early on because its high price combined with latency issues made the upgrade from DDR1 feel underwhelming for many users. DDR3 arrived in 2007 with an 80N prefetch buffer, doubling the prefetch depth again from DDR2 and pushing clock speeds into ranges that felt transformative at the time. Speeds started at 800 MHz and climbed to 1600 MHz in standard configurations, with extreme overclocked modules eventually hitting 2400 MHz and beyond. Voltage dropped again to 1.5 volts, and a low-voltage variant called DDR3L ran at just 1.35 volts, which became important for the laptop market because it meaningfully extended battery life without sacrificing much performance. Stick capacities reached 4 GB and 8 GB commonly, meaning a fully loaded dual-channel system could hit 16 GB. With that kind of headroom, DDR3 made it genuinely comfortable to run Adobe Photoshop and Lightroom for photo editing, play graphically demanding games like Battlefield 3 and Skyrim, juggle multiple browser tabs alongside a music app and a word processor, and even dabble in light video editing and software like Sony Vegas without the system grinding to a halt. One aspect of DDR3 that does not get discussed enough is how it changed the integrated graphics landscape. Intel's Sandy Bridge processors, released in 2011, paired DDR3 with an integrated GPU that shared system memory. Because the GPU had no dedicated VRAM of its own, the bandwidth and speed of the system RAM directly determined how well integrated graphics performed. A system running dual-channel DDR3 1600 could see dramatically better frame rates in games compared to a single-channel setup running at the same speed, sometimes as much as 30 to 40% better in graphics-bound scenarios. This made RAM slot configuration suddenly matter to everyday laptop buyers in a way it never had before. DDR3 also benefited enormously from improved manufacturing processes that brought prices down faster than previous generations. By 2010 and 2011, 8 gigabytes of DDR3 was affordable for most consumers, and 16 gigabyte builds became realistic for enthusiasts. The Windows 7 era matched DDR3's performance profile nearly perfectly, and for the first time in a while, RAM felt like it was no longer the weak link in the chain. DDR4 launched in 2014 alongside Intel's Haswell E platform and brought another voltage reduction down to 1.2 volts, with a low-voltage DDR4L variant dropping to 1.05 volts for mobile applications. Clock speed started at 2,133 MHz and scaled up through 2,400, 3,200, and 3,600 MHz in mainstream configurations, with extreme overclocking kits pushing past 5,000 MHz. Capacity per stick reached 8 gigabytes and 16 gigabytes commonly, with 32 gigabyte sticks available for workstation builds. That kind of capacity and speed meant DDR4 could comfortably handle 1080p and 1440p gaming in titles like Red Dead Redemption 2 and Cyberpunk 2077, support professional video editing workflows in Premiere Pro and DaVinci Resolve, run virtual machines smoothly for developers and IT professionals, and keep up with live game streaming setups where the CPU is simultaneously encoding video, running the game, and managing chat overlays all at once. DDR4 introduced a few under-the-radar technical improvements worth knowing about. The bank group architecture was one of the most significant. DDR4 divided its internal memory banks into groups that could operate more independently than in DDR3, which reduced the time the controller had to wait between successive memory accesses. This improved real-world performance in ways that raw clock speed numbers alone did not capture. DDR4 also increased the number of internal banks per module compared to DDR3, which improved the memory controller's ability to handle multiple simultaneous requests efficiently. Another detail is that DDR4 modules incorporated a more sophisticated power management system, with voltage regulation circuitry moved closer to the memory chips to reduce electrical noise at the higher frequencies DDR4 operated at. DDR4 also happened to arrive at a time when operating systems, games, and creative software were all scaling their memory demands rapidly, and its combination of high capacity, reasonable price, and platform longevity made it the right technology at exactly the right time. DDR5 officially launched in 2021 alongside Intel's Alder Lake platform and represented the most dramatic architectural redesign since the original DDR standard was introduced. The prefetch buffer jumped to 16 nanoseconds, double that of DDR4, which allowed DDR5 to reach base speeds of 4,800 MHz, with high-performance kits running at 6,000 MHz and beyond. Voltage dropped to 1.1 volts at the module level, but DDR5 introduced something entirely new in consumer RAM history: an integrated power management integrated circuit, or PMIC, built directly onto each memory stick. In previous generations, power regulation was handled by the motherboard. Moving it onto the module itself allowed for more precise voltage control at the chip level, which was essential for maintaining signal integrity at the extremely high frequencies DDR5 operates at, with speed starting at 4,800 MHz and capacity scaling up to 32 gigabytes and even 64 gigabytes per stick in high-end configurations. DDR5 opened up a new tier of performance for workloads that previous generations simply could not handle gracefully. Running real-time 3D rendering in Blender, editing 4K or even 8K footage in DaVinci Resolve, training local AI models, and playing the most demanding open-world games at maximum settings all became noticeably smoother experiences with DDR5 compared to even the fastest DDR4 setups. DDR5 also doubled the number of independent 32-bit sub-channels per module compared to DDR4's single 64-bit channel, meaning a single DDR5 stick effectively behaves like two narrower independent memory channels internally, improving how efficiently the memory controller can pipeline data requests. The ECC functionality built into DDR5 is another first for mainstream consumer memory, providing on-die error correction that catches and fixes single-bit memory errors before they ever reach the CPU. This was previously only found in server-grade registered ECC memory, and its inclusion in consumer DDR5 reflects how demanding modern workloads like AI inference, 4K rendering, and large-scale simulation have become even at the enthusiast level.